Thanks for attending. So look, I think we might kick off because it is short. It's a short session, and thanks for joining. Ergo, in the past 24 months, has been certified as a expert Fortinet partner, which is the highest you can get. And we've also been certified in OT, SD-WAN, and SASE. So I'm already talking about terminology that we need to demystify, and this call is about helping you with the terminology. And I'm joined today by Conor Byrne, who's a senior SC in Fortinet. He's a straight talker and quite easy to listen to as far as explaining some of this terminology. And we're going to be talking about things like SD branch, NAC, or network access control, ZTNA, and segmentation, and OT. There's a lot of terminology, and as someone that's half technical and also involved in sales, sometimes you can trip over the terminology. Fortinet, what's great about Fortinet is they're the first really to develop this full Fortinet fabric or converged platform that goes from Wi-Fi access points to switches to SD-WAN to SASE to firewalls. They're market leaders in the Gartner, and we'll be mentioning Gartner a lot because it's Gardner's fault, or Gardner. It's thanks to Gardner that we have all these terms and acronyms and so on. So I might start off there, Conor, talking terminology, and we'll just do a kind of quick fire round of terminology. So I might just start with SD branch. Is it Wi-Fi, LAN, and FortiManager as the portal, or is it more than that?
It's more than that. Hello, everybody, by the way. So SD branch is a term usually used to define a platform or a solution that provides wired and wireless connectivity. And the SD piece is the SD-WAN capability, which is really all about intelligent WAN path selection. And it is often centrally managed using FortiManager. So a single platform to do everything that you'd need in terms of connectivity for a branch office. Just to talk quickly about the Fortinet SD branch proposition, it is the FortiGate, which I'm sure many people on the call will be familiar with. But we also have a whole range of Forti switches and APs, Forti APs, and they're all very much plug and play. In fact, you can do zero-touch provisioning if you've many different branches to roll out. And that makes life very easy from an operations perspective. That's one GUI to manage all of your wired and wireless connectivity. And the other thing is that once you kind of adopt that platform approach, you get a lot of security benefits, including we can profile devices as they're connected. We get a thing in the FortiGate called the asset inventory, which will show you a database of every device that's connected, wired or wirelessly, within the branch. You also get NAC, which you mentioned. So we can do, based on devices that are profiled, we can do things like dynamic VLAN assignment, put the device into an appropriate VLAN. If it's a voice device or a phone, maybe we drop it into the voice VLAN. If it's an IoT device, maybe we put it into the IoT VLAN. And then we can do lots of other things in terms of automation. One example being, if the fabric detects a compromised host, we can take that device automatically off the network, quarantine it until it's remediated. And we can do that at the FortiGate level, at an IP level, or with that Fortinet access layer, we can do it to block access to the wired or wireless network.
Yeah, and we will be coming back to segmentation and OT in a question coming up. But I should just also say, I think one thing that is good about the Forti branches, when you're buying licenses for the FortiManager, you just have to get one for the FortiGate. You don't have to buy licenses for the all of the access points and LANs, which is kind of unique as well. But moving into the one that kind of gets me most is ZTNA. What is it? And I came across it first in terms of Wi-Fi, and then I come across in terms of kind of remote access. So maybe if you could talk to us a bit about ZTNA and ZTA and maybe the difference between it and traditional VPNs. So there's
Mm,
about three questions there, but
that's all right, no problem. So it's, I suppose, to define it, first of all, it is zero trust network access, and it's a Gartner coined term, which is really all about application access as opposed to network access. So possibly a badly named term by Gartner, and they talk about a trust broker that can verify the identity of users and devices that they connect to the applications, and this trust broker enforces that identity and checks the context, what they call the security context of the connecting device, what we would call the security posture, before granting access to the application. So it's a kind of a broad definition, the Gartner
mm,
definition. It's probably worth mentioning ZTNA is an application access method that aligns with zero trust principles. So there's a lot of kind of confusion around the zero trust terms and terminology. Zero trust is an architecture. It's actually a term that Forrester came up with probably about 20 years ago at this stage. And it's widely used by vendors. I think we're all guilty of overusing it as a term. But ZTNA is a very specific thing that aligns to that architectural principle. So zero trust as an idea is all about no implied trust based on location. Always verify and never grant implicit access because you're inside the boundary of a network. That concept is gone. In terms of the Fortinet ZTNA solution, every FortiGate is that application proxy or trust broker that sits in line between a connecting client and an application. So it allows for a really secure method of application access using something that is built into the FortiGate and is not a licensed feature. It's there free of charge in every FortiGate. And then by adding either FortiSASE, which I'm sure we'll get to, and
yep,
or FortiClient EMS, they're two sort of additional platforms that allow you to stitch together this ZTNA platform. But really, it's all about being able to access applications in a really secure fashion based on strong device identity, strong user identity, and context information or posturing of the endpoint. And ZTNA tunnels, unlike traditional VPN tunnels, they're not sort of connect once in the morning and it's up all day. ZTNA tunnels are built on a per session basis and torn down after that session is finished. The other thing is that the user experience is much better. Gone are the days that you stop and start a tunnel with a VPN client. You
mm,
open an application, regardless of location. You could be on the network or working from home. And often unbeknownst to the user, those three checks are done, checking device, user, and posture of the endpoint. So we can do
mm.
things like,
Yeah,
is the device AV up to date? Is there any critical vulnerabilities or any other reason that we might want to prevent that device from connecting to our applications? So
yeah.
hopefully that gives
No,
you a sense of it.
that has definitely helped. I suppose what I'd say to everybody on the call as well, particularly customers and potential customers, look, today is just kind of an inch deep and a mile wide, but really what we'd love to do is have a face-to-face meeting with Ergo and Fortinet and help you with your roadmap and go through these in detail, particularly from an end user point of view. So excellent explanation, Connor. Thanks. But I would say to anyone who does struggle with some of this terminology, as I do, we are here to work with you and Fortinet, and as I say, help you with your roadmap. The next one is: do customers usually bring up segmentation at a pre-sales or a post-sales? And
Mm.
how does a converged network, or what does a converged network bring to segmentation? Um, so maybe if you want to talk a little bit about segmentation in
Segmentation.
relation to networks, yeah.
So it comes up both pre-sales and post-sales. If you already have invested in the Fortinet technology already, likely you'll be able to facilitate segmentation. So it's a common conversation. We're getting it all the time. There's a few specific regulatory things that's driving segmentation. One being DORA, the Financial Services Resilience, I suppose, guidance and standards there. And that specifically calls out in Section 6 that a network should be segmented. It also says, admin access should be out of band and a few other things like that. So it's that plus, I suppose, for years now, the likes of the NCSE in the UK and in Ireland and CISA in the States, they've all been driving this concept of a zero trust architecture. And I would see segmenting your network as a foundational component of a zero trust model. Because what it's all about, I suppose, is creating zones within the data center or the network and being able to inspect traffic between those zones so that if there is some sort of a vulnerability exploit and a compromised host within a zone, you can prevent the lateral movement within the data center. In terms of how our platform facilitates segmentation, just to quickly mention a few things. One would be there's NAC, as I mentioned. So you can sort of automate that process of dropping the device into the appropriate VLAN. There's also some nice things with both wired and wireless where we can block peer-to-peer traffic within a VLAN. So if my laptop and your laptop, Gavin, are both in the user's VLAN within an SD branch, for example, even if we're in the same subnet, same VLAN, we can check a button on the FortiGate that essentially forces the FortiSwitch to bring all of the frames from our laptops up to the FortiGate for inspection, and by default, blocking all of that peer-to-peer traffic. That's something that you can get by default on the wireless as well. And again, it's all about preventing that lateral spread. If you get one compromised host, we want to do what we can to implement controls to block the spread of that threat throughout the rest of the network.
That converged Wi-Fi, LAN, SD-WAN, does that bring anything extra? Like what I like about Fortinet is the fact that you've got this converged platform of everything, and your competitors are buying up companies to, I guess, go down that converged road. So convergence of network and Wi-Fi and LAN and SD branch and etc. on the one platform is in vogue. But does that bring anything extra to segmentation by having a consolidated platform of Wi-Fi, LAN, SD-WAN?
Well, I suppose it's down to the operational efficiency. Just to your point about it being in vogue. Fortinet, I think, we're pioneers in the space of platformization, and we've been talking about the Fortinet security fabric since I started about 7 years ago. So it's good to see other companies catching up. But I think you're right. We have a head start there, and it really allows for segmentation without putting much burden on the operations teams. You can sort of create those zones of control, inspect all of the traffic in between, do your dynamic VLAN assignment, and all of that stuff is kind of GUI driven, simple to configure, all possible because there's native integration between those different platforms.
Well, staying with segmentation, but just branching out into OT, operational technology, and IoT, and all these devices that are hanging on your network. And you mentioned the FortiGates can gather up information on all these assets. But what are you seeing in the OT space in relation to segmentation and overall? Does that conversation, is there a convergence between IT and OT? Are those people are facilities people in the room when you're talking to customers these days?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's a big focus area for Fortinet, probably in the last 4 or 5 years. There is lots more convergence of OT and IT. For those who aren't familiar, OT is all about industrial equipment and processes and how we keep that type of thing secure, maybe in a manufacturing plant, for example. And there's specific things we need to consider when we're doing that. And unique protocols, things like Modbus and Profibus, and protocols that we don't see in the IT world. But the principles are the same, and segmentation is absolutely something that is sensible to do in the OT network as much as it is in the IT world. Just in practical terms, what the Fortinet platform offers you is, number one, all of those 40 switches and 40 gates and 40 APs that maybe some of the listeners would be familiar with in the IT world. There's ruggedized versions of those that are available for harsh conditions like manufacturing plants, for example, and outdoor uses and so on. But the operating system is the same, the threat intelligence is the same, and with a license, you can enable all of this OT capabilities on any Fortinet fabric. And one of the sort of nice things that you get there, which I haven't mentioned so far, is that the FortiGate can detect vulnerable OT devices within the OT network, and rather than you having to patch them immediately, you can mitigate the threat by using an IPS signature within the FortiGate to prevent exploit of that vulnerability. So, and this happens automatically. So the detection of the endpoint, the profiling of the endpoint so we know what it is, and the application of what we call a virtual patch, that is an IPS signature to prevent exploit of that vulnerability. That's all built into the fabric with that OT license.
Yeah.
But a lot of the stuff, as I say, is transferable from IT
Yeah.
to OT. The
Yeah.
principles of zero trust apply.
Gotcha. Okay, I should say that if you have any questions, you can put them in the Q&A box. The next one is it's an area dear to my heart, but I've been involved in wide area networks for the past 20 years. MPLS has ruled the waves, but I guess with the likes of Cyro and National Broadband Ireland, you can now get a gig internet connection. So there's with business SLAs, there is a kind of migration from MPLS to internet based SD-WANs, which came along in about 2018. And then SASE came along in, I'm going to say 2020-ish. And some customers may be a little bit confused between SD-WAN and SASE. Should they go SD-WAN or just kick the can down the road and go SASE in a couple of years' time when it matures up a bit more? But maybe if you could just tell us what your view of the difference between SD-WAN and SASE, and can you use the same Fortinet equipment to connect to SD-WAN and then connect to SASE in 2 years' time? Or any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, okay, I suppose SD-WAN is, first of all, a function of the FortiGate. It is steering traffic on a per application basis across a WAN path, be that an internet connection or otherwise. I should say, you mentioned MPLS and SD-WAN as being a replacement for MPLS. That's not necessarily the case in the world of Fortinet. We can leverage any number of different types of underlay, any types of connectivity, including MPLS. And as you say, maybe cheaper internet connections, LTE connections, etc. So every FortiGate has SD-WAN capabilities. And in fact, it's Gartner top right for SD-WAN and has been for a number of years. And the FortiGate can, deliver everything you'd expect in terms, to be able to improve the user experience. If there's latency, packet loss, or jitter on a given link, it'll reroute that traffic over a better performing link. SD-WAN, unlike sort of traditional WANs, don't typically require hardcore BGP knowledge and a lot of CLI configurations. It's much more GUI driven, zero touch provisioning in the case of large networks, all sort of easy point and click sort of configuration. That's SD-WAN in brief, I suppose. SD-WAN is also part of a SASE architecture. So much like zero trust being an architectural principle, a SASE architecture is yet another Gartner defined term for, I suppose, a solution or a platform comprised of, they say, a few specific things. One is SD-WAN. The others are cloud delivered security services, including firewall as a service, cloud access security broker, CASB, ZTNA, which we mentioned, that application access, and finally, secure web gateway. You know, FortiSASE, which we'll talk about, delivers other things beyond that sort of, but that's the Gartner definition. You know, FortiSASE, we have things like DLP, we have remote browser isolation, we have, digital experience monitoring and other bits and pieces. But a SASE architecture leverages SD-WAN and that intelligent steering of traffic. But it's a bigger thing. And I suppose in simple terms, what it does is allow you to secure internet access to SaaS services like OneDrive or Salesforce or Dropbox or whatever, and provides that really secure method of application access using the ZTNA.
Yeah.
All cloud delivered, all single platform in terms of management. In our case, I think a real strength for us is the fact that it's based on FortiOS. So the skills that you have in the world of FortiGate is transferable into the world of FortiSASE, and it's leveraging that FortiGuard threat intelligence. So, you know, the threat intelligence that you know and trust on-prem with your FortiGates, you can extend that to all of your devices everywhere, users working from home, and any other small pop-up office or anything that you might want to connect to SASE.
Yeah.
Just to quickly mention, it is possible to sort of move from SD-WAN with a FortiGate with an eye to maybe SASE in the future. So there's probably too long a conversation for this call, but we can essentially have a FortiGate connect to your FortiSASE infrastructure so that all of that traffic is tunneled to a cloud data center where you can do all of the inspections. So different licensing model, more of a cloud-based approach, but it is supported with your FortiGate. So you could go SD-WAN and on-prem inspection today, SASE in the future.
Exactly. That's that's important on the particularly on kit. You know, no one wants to be buying kit that's going to be obsolete as they move into the SASE world. I should also say, you know, while the FortiManager is easy to use and gives you all the stats by application and user and all that kind of stuff, we in Ergo do provide a managed service. So some customers say that's great, it's easy to use, but we can manage it for you should you want. So you get read access and we do everything else. We do also offer read write access and we manage it. So you can have the keys of the car to make some changes. So that's something unique. The last area wanted to cover was around price. So we did talk about return on investment and cost centers and so on. So what does this converged Fortinet fabric solution bring from a cost saving point of view, do you think?
Yes, there are cost savings. I suppose as individual solution components, the FortiGate, FortiSwitch, FortiAP, and the rest of the Fortinet fabric tends to deliver a lot of bang for the buck, and you get a lot of good value for money, I think. So put head to head with point product solutions, we should fare well in terms of price. Really, what you're talking about is when we integrate those solutions and build a platform like we've discussed. And that, for me, the biggest saving there will be the operational efficiencies that can be gained by having that single platform approach. As I said, it's one GUI for your operations teams to go to every day, one place to make changes to policy. And as the user moves from on-prem to remote to Starbucks to anywhere else, go on their holidays, you can still track that device, enforce those zero trust policies, and the policy follows the user as they move around. So operational efficiency is one. The other one, I suppose, is that the nature of the platform and that native integration is such that it allows for a lot of automation, which I think reduces the mean time to remediate. So we can detect with the FortiGate, and oftentimes we can block with the FortiGate. But once we add that sort of platform approach, we can take mitigating action to quarantine a host, to, as I say, take the host off the network. Maybe we want to send a Teams notification or a Slack notification to your operations team to say, this host was compromised. We have taken the action to mitigate the threat. And here's a link to the logs in FortiAnalyzer. So
Yeah.
Operational efficiency is the big one for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks a mil, Connor. That was great, and I would agree. I think from a point solution point of view, Fortinet versus the other main competitors, I definitely see the cost savings as someone who does quotes all the time for customers, and yeah, the operational efficiency is key. I'll just see, was there any one question there? I'll just read that out. What does a successful
So,
SASE deployment look like?
good question. And a big question. It depends on the use case, I think. So people come at SASE from different angles. Sometimes they're looking for a replacement of their VPN, and it's really that ZTNA capability that they want. Other times they're deploying a new WAN and they want the SD-WAN capabilities. And yet again, it could be you have laptops, everybody's working from home these days. You'd be surprised the number of customers that we speak to that still rely entirely on the endpoint protection when a device leaves the network. So what SASE
Yeah.
gives you is, as I mentioned earlier, you can almost think of it as stretching the FortiGate capabilities that you have on-prem to all users and devices in every
Yeah.
location and getting all visibility into that. So depends what way you're coming at it and what you want to
Yeah.
achieve, but it can be, I suppose, a staged approach. Might be worth mentioning that the FortiSASE licensing model facilitates almost everything that I discussed there. So we've
Yeah.
pride ourselves in having quite a simple licensing model.
Yeah.
So again, yeah, conversation possibly to be had with Ergo and
Yeah.
Fortinet to thrash it out.
What I would say, we've a few SASE customers, but two of which, and it ties in what you just said. One is they were moving office, and there was a 6 week gap between not having an office, so they were able to use SASE and the same policy for people working from home. So to not have a HQ for 6 weeks and to survive, so SASE helped them out. And then another company that has a knock, and their knock went down, and their engineers at home had full access to everything. So I suppose. I'm just echoing what you said, but the ability for end users to do what they need to do, no matter where they are, is the successful outcome of a SASE. But for anyone who needs help with any of this terminology, we'd love to have a session. Um, whether you come into the Ergo HQ, which is also our knock, so you can see all of our tooling and so on, and we can have a session to try understand what you have today, what your roadmap looks like, how we can help you, so you can explain it to your board and your peers of what you're trying to achieve. That's something we would be delighted to do. So I might wrap it up there. Oh, there's one more question. Yeah, sorry. How this how this converged platform applies to connectivity to cloud tenants. How this converged platform applies to connectivity to cloud tenants. Um,
So I can speak to that.
yeah,
I suppose
please.
the FortiGate, as I said, the operating system that runs on FortiGate is FortiOS. Whether you deploy that within the SASE cloud as a FortiGate appliance on-prem or as a FortiGate VM in the cloud, the same protections apply. And many of our customers are cloud first and entirely they have no data centers. They've moved everything to the cloud. And in that scenario, there's many other things other than the FortiGate, but usually a key component of the security controls that they have within cloud is a FortiGate. So they'd have everything that we discussed is possible on FortiGate. You can have it used as a ZTNA application proxy so that you get zero trust application access into your cloud. You can create east-west filtering and segmentation within your cloud with VNet peering model for Azure, or NAWS has a similar architecture. And all of those inspections that we discussed, application inspection, web filtering, anti-botnet, IPS, etc., all entirely applicable in the cloud. As I say, that's just start. We have many other
Yeah.
different things for the world of cloud, CNAPs and WAFs and
Yeah.
all the rest of it. But
Yeah.
conversation for another day, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. And to any of our customers out there, and anyone else, we'd love your feedback. We're trying not to be sales orientated or pushing. It's really to demystify the terminology and help you guys out, without trying to be salesy or anything like that. So if you have any feedback or you'd like to see more sessions on this type of thing, we'd love to hear from you. So we might leave it there,
Do
Connor.
you want to
Yeah.
mention the stuff again, Gavin? Wasn't there something in the chat that the guys can click on?
Yes.
Yeah, the goodie bag.
If
Goodie bag.
the goodie bag, yes, yes. Yeah, there is plenty of bottles, notebooks, and nice pens with Ergo and Fortinet on them, and we'd be delighted to send them out. So just let us know if you're interested, and we'll get that to you. And other than that, Connor, thanks a million. Always a pleasure talking to you, and thanks to everybody for joining us.
Not
And
at
we'll
all.
leave it there.
Thanks, Gavin. See you
Cheers.
guys. Bye bye. Have a good
Bye
day.
bye.
See ya.